And over the weekend, Radio New Zealand News, that citadel of wokeness, but also the leading media outlet in this country for the Māori activist indigenous movement, published yet again another article, and lovingly curated over many minutes, hours it seemed, but also you can go and read it for yourself. They've set up a Māori journalism unit in Radio New Zealand News within the state broadcaster for the express purpose, it would appear, of promoting Māori independence and promoting rangatiratanga as a political imperative for this country. Renamed, of course, Aotearoa. Of course, it's not for New Zealand, it's for Aotearoa. The latest was the interviewing and promotion over the weekend of the views of Māori activist academic, Auckland Law School Associate Professor, Auckland Law School Associate Professor, Māori activist, classic DEI appointment, I have to be honest with you, Andrew Iruiti. An appointment who mistakes generally in almost everything he ever says and does, and my God, remember this, he's lecturing an entire tranche of law students every year as part of the DEI politics of Auckland University. But anyhow, a man who regularly mistakes polemics for research and bias for knowledge. Anyhow, over the weekend, he published, in association with Radio New Zealand News, new research. All right? New research. Except it wasn't research, it was an argument. It was a polemic. But it was typical of him and Radio New Zealand News in particular to confuse a polemic and rhetoric and an argument in favour of Māori sovereignty as quote-unquote new research. No, it wasn't any research at all. Anyhow, the research was entitled, and get this, Indigenous Rights Beyond the Liberal Frame. Now just think about that for a moment. The title of the research, published by Professor Iruiti, God knows where it was published, but lovingly transcribed by Radio New Zealand and given prominence and preeminence, is titled Indigenous Rights, Beyond the Liberal Frame. And that title itself is very revealing, because it suggests that liberal thought, including human rights and indigenous rights, are not only not the same thing, but they're actually in conflict and incompatible. Indigenous rights and liberal Western rights are not the same thing. Now, Associate Professor Iruiti expands the idea that the New Zealand government is using the New Zealand government. See, it's not the Aotearoa government now, it's the New Zealand government. Anytime anything goes wrong, it's New Zealand. Anytime anything is progressive and good, it's Aotearoa. Have you noticed that about New Zealand? The Radio New Zealand? Anyhow, the New Zealand government is using human rights law and language and concepts, okay, human rights law, language and concepts, human rights, like equality, non-discrimination, freedom of thought and religion, speech, against Māori people. That's the thesis. And the indigenous rights movement, because, as he rightly points out, actually, the two are actually incompatible. You see, you can't have equality for all and Māori rangatiratanga, because the latter asserts an independence and a primacy that denies, that promotes that one race, one ethnicity, or one culture has special rights compared to everybody else, and that those special rights are denied to all others. Now you see what I mean? In fact, Professor Iruiti doesn't like the rhetoric, he calls it, of human rights. It doesn't, he says, allow for what he calls Māori initiatives to flourish. In other words, that Māori and Māori only get to construct their own, their own health system, their own banking system, their own justice system, their own supermarkets, whatever, in the name of Te Tiriti. And he's sort of right, of course. And that's the thing about people sometimes can actually, by just letting themselves talk, and in this case by publishing something, betray how anti-democratic they really are, and how determined they are to disrupt the Western liberal tradition. You see, you can't have Māori independence and human rights. The two of them can't coexist, as Professor Iroiti so eloquently expounds in his thesis. They are incompatible not only in rhetoric, but in reality. The moment that you assert that one culture, one ethnicity, one people are special and need to be treated specially, then the notion of equality dies. The Māori independence movement is about subverting the notion, the great Western liberal heritage of individual freedoms and the rights of all being universal and equal. We should be indebted, I suppose, can I just say, to Radio New Zealand News and to Professor Iroiti for exposing the Māori supremacy argument for what it is. Cloaked within that Māori sovereignty cause is a desire to upturn all of Western democracy, all of Western equality, all of human rights in favour of one particular class of people. And so I have to say, that was my sort of interesting take of the weekend. That here, yet again, and it's almost every weekend, the state broadcasters, whether it's Television New Zealand or Radio New Zealand News, runs the line of the Māori separatist independence movement in this country. And can I just say to Associate Professor Iroiti and to Radio New Zealand News, thank you for confirming what we've always suspected, that the last thing you want is individual freedom, equality and human rights in this country. We always knew you were fascists. I guess you've just proven it. Those are my thoughts this morning. What are yours?